Hi, and welcome to the next webinar in 12D's training webinar series. My name is Lisa Stewart, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator at 12D Solutions. 12D's training webinars showcase common industry challenges, taking a close look at industry best practices and how these can be implemented using 12D products. The aim of these webinars is to upskill 12D users and broaden their understanding of the capabilities of 12D products. We run these webinars regularly and record them for posting through our website and on YouTube. The previous webinars from this training series, as well as the webinars from our Industry Solutions series, are all available on our YouTube channels if you missed those. During this live presentation, you'll be able to type your questions along the way, as shown on the screen, and we'll answer as many as possible throughout the webinar. At the end, I'll email your questions to the presenter for his insights. Today's webinar will be presented by Peter Tainton, who has over 20 years of experience in various facets of road design. Peter has been engaged in large projects for several major councils and government road authorities, and he has worked closely with our programmers in the implementation of a variety of design features within 12D model, including the superalignment and design speed tables, construction subgrade detailing, design geometry components, overlays, pad design interface, and visualization. Today's presentation, Traffic Light Layout and Basic Line Marking, is episode 4 in this series. This webinar will look at light placement and orientation, lane, turn, continuous markings and such, directional arrow indicators, pavement markings, such as bikeway and disabled markings, and several other bits and pieces that Peter will go over with you. Okay, over to you, Peter.
Welcome everyone to today's session on Trimesh objects within 12D for line marking and Trimesh objects for traffic signals. In previous webinars we looked at the Trimesh Create, Edit and Apply, so in recapping, shipped with 12D is a variety of shape definitions that can be applied to form Trimesh features such as landscape and construction fences, safety barriers, retaining walls, bridges profiles, road profiles, service and drainage trenches, line marking, directional arrows and symbols. The definitions are stored in a standard file called 12D Trimesh nodelink.4d, which is to be found in your setups area. The file can be copied from here to your user or working folder. The format is XML. The Trimesh shapes are applied to strings in relation to vertices and segments, so it is therefore imperative that the strings you use are valid strings. So no null levels, vertices that cross over or go back on themselves, or closed strings that are not supposed to be closed. Our data today comprises mainly an intersection component within 12D and apply many strings. Also displayed on the view is a super tin comprising the road design surface and traffic island tins. The strings have been given a variety of names that reflect the type of line marking that we wish to apply. Under BIM Trimesh Create, we're going to look at the Apply option and the traffic signals. First we'll look at the Trimesh BIM Objects Apply. There's a parameter file you can enter that you can read and write in subsequent sessions that will save all the information displayed on the panel. Just for ease of time in our video, I'll just be adding or applying Trimeshes to different strings and just adding it continuously to the same model. There is a undo, so if I do make a mistake I can undo and redo it again. So under the location, our file that we talked about, we're going to use the setups one. So our model, we're looking at a Trimesh model for line marking. So under the vertex segment types, we'll drop down to pavement marking. So we'll be looking at pedestrian crossings, directional arrows, line marking and symbols. So just for line marking, when we select that, all the line marking ones are segment type, So if I go right mouse button on here, we get a list of the ones that are available at this stage in your setups area. Fairly self-explanatory: edge lines, double lines, turn, continuity, holding, give way, stop, and so forth. If you were using a parameter file and you want to rerun, you'd obviously want to clean the model beforehand, but we'll leave that vacant for this session. The attributes can be used, the global attributes, in not only setting up the definitions for our line marking, but also as we apply them. So underneath the attributes, left button, we can pick up Trimesh pavement marking. So this is where the actual line marking is utilised. So for the things like continuity line, holding lines, give way lines, we can specify a length and a gap and even a width if we want. We'll have a quick look at that in our definitions at a later stage. So on the attribute path here, if your strings do have some attribute information underneath a group heading, for instance survey, and you want to be able to copy that information directly across to your Trimesh, you just specify the group heading, which in that case would be survey. The tin I want to add to is our super tin. And our regular distance is just a distance along the string that you supply that it will use to sample the tin surface and create the Trimesh. So in that case here, we're looking at our filter type, so we have to go select our data. So we're just going to use a filter. We're going to pick up a model, and the model is just our line marking model, just a super string with levels. And our string info we're going to do by name. So we'll pick our turn lane to start with, filter select, and so the edge type that we want is turn lane. So we go process, and it creates our turn lanes. So again, just look at the definition, whatever spacing and interval that you're trying to measure, and whatever width you supplied. So if we go and look at our other lines, this will be our stop lines. So again, filter select, and we go and grab the stop line, and again process. So having the names on one model is okay, and being able to distinguish which ones are which for which Trimesh option, we are utilising name. So if I go and grab these names, which is just all my full line marking, and I go to edge line, and again process. So again, I can pick up other lines like holding lines or give way lines. Again, filter select, and I can grab give way and process. So here we're looking at the lines here, so we're starting to build up our intersection. So now we can go and grab our continuity line. So in that case here we're looking at a right turn lanes and those sorts of things. So if we go filter, and then we go and grab continuity line, and again process. The other lines would be things like lane lines. So we pick up our lane line or separation lane and go and grab our separation, and again process. So it's quite a simple way of being able to grab your line marking and apply a Trimesh via name. If we're going to look at the situations like our curbs and our traffic islands, they normally have a design string, which is the lip or the face of the median. So in that case, I'll put them onto another model, so I can go and grab those, and their name is, in this case, just called island. I go filter select. So these are strings that have come out of your apply menu, so there's lots of vertices along the string and lots of vertices that actually define that nose. So I don't really need to have an interval there. I can use the vertices that are on the string themselves. I can drop down and change that to an edge line, and again go process. It'll turn around and create the line marking line again, again on all the island strings. But if once it's finished, we'll have a closer look at the line marking, and you'll notice that it's partly on the road and partly up the median. So in that case, this string that I picked was actually the edge of the line marking, and the line marking really needed to be to the left hand side. So if I go Control Z on that and undo what I'd done, I can drop into the attributes. So again, I can select the attribute, and there's one called line marking position. So it allows you to say which side of the string that you select do you want the line marking to be placed. So I want it to be on the left hand side of that string. So I go set and process. So now it creates the line marking on the proper side, takes into account the crossfall in the tin surface, and creates the tri-mesh. So next type of one that would work like that would be your Kerb. So in most apply menus, the Kerb return is usually left-hand orientated. So what's on the other side is you want to be on the right-hand side of the Kerb. So pick our Kerb lips, and we'll change the attribute here to right side and process. So again, it then applies the line marking around the lip of Kerb. So if we have a look at our west approach road here, we can now also look at the pavement markings, or arrows, or symbols, whichever way you want to call it. So in that case, I want to go into here and I want to select on our pavement marking directional arrows. So I'll clear the attributes for that for a moment, and we'll put this on another model called line marking arrows. So the arrow definition is going to be along this string here, so I might want them every 20 meters. And I want to use this list that we have at the moment. I want to use a left-hand turn, and I say all, and I go process. So it creates the left-hand turn arrows draped onto the tin surface, but they're centered on this string. I really meant it to be on the inside. There's also an extra string at the top there at the start, which I don't need. So I can go undo, and I can say I only want them at intermediate intervals. And if I now go to my attributes, and I grab directional arrows. So in that case, I want to be able to say my offset is -1.75. I go set, and again process. So now the arrows are positioned on in the right place. You could have had some strings drawn with vertice points to define where the arrows are. There's 4 of those points here, with possibly an arrow symbol already on them. So in that case, you go to the attribute, and you continue here, and you say, I want to use the attribute symbol. And the points are exactly where you want them, so there's no offset involved. And there's also no interval, because the 4 points are the 4 points where I want the arrow. So I want all those, and I go process. In that case there, it's the wrong side, so I change that to right turn and just process again. So those sorts of pavement markings. And there's also other types called symbols. So under here, if I go to symbols, and I'll clear the attributes, and I want to have say a bike lane, or I'll say every 30 meters. I go process. So it'll look at that string, create and drape the bike symbol on that pavement. So again, if I go on plus arrow process, it then creates a arrow with a line marking. So obviously they could be on this side as well. So you could turn around and select a road string, same as we did for the arrows, for these type of symbols. So the other type of symbols that are available there are a pedestrian, disabled, and so forth. So when we look at how the line marking was created and what defines these segment distances and so forth, especially for the continuity lines and the hold lines and so forth, so under the BIM Trimesh Create, we look at the Create Edit one. So inside that one, we can go to our setups like we did before, and we can go to our line marking and grab line marking. Again, they're all edge lines, but they're all type rectangular. So if I look at a turn line, it's just a rectangular shape. So the properties define what the width of the line marking is and what the depth is. But what the extra bit added besides the name is the attributes. So if you go left button here and continue, this is where you set the length and the gap for that particular line marking. So all the ones that have gaps in them use these attributes to define their definition. For things like the chevronning and those types of things, and also the pedestrian crossings, again they're just simply a style that has been created there for you. But the chevronning or the crossing has been saved, so it's the same thing. You just pick a string, and from the list you just grab pedestrian crossing instead of line marking or directional arrows. So same sort of process, just pick the string. The chevron themselves comes from a so we go back to our intersection. The chevrons here are just super strings drawn and draped onto the surface, and then triangulated. So under BIM Trimesh Create, you can create the Trimesh from a tin surface. So here we're just using the triangulation, offsetting it slightly above so you can see it, and then a little bit of depth so it goes below the tin, and that's how you represent chevroning. So under BIM Trimesh Create, we have our traffic signals. These are all Trimesh, everything, all the parts. There is an older version underneath visualization, traffic signals, and they use billboards. But unfortunately, the billboards weren't able to be exported effectively to IFC. So we've created the traffic lights totally as BIM objects. So grab our model, we'll just look at our traffic signals, and we'll look at our island. So looking at that sort of thing there, and also on the other side. Right, so there's a definition, again a tin surface. We will select our super tin, and there's a choices. So there's a signal post, there's a few outreaches, so you can get those sorts of things as well, different types of outreach. This 6.5 represents 6.5 meters. Signals, so you have the 3 signals like that. When it says cows, it just means that there's a cylinder around the visor or the light, and viewed for across the intersection. The ones with no cows have a slight bevel on it, so they're usually used when they're close to the intersection. So again, you've got the same sort of ones, the 4 lead ones, and then you've got the aspects with the columns and so forth, all red and green, left or right. Under pedestrian, we have a lanterns for the pedestrian walk signs, or a representation of that. And under pedestrian, we've also got a button. So again, under pits, we can look at different signal pits and sizes. So we go back to our signal post, and we zoom into here, and we wish to place a post. So it'll automatically use that tin surface. So if I select a point here and go accept, it'll then turn around and create the post for you. This is a point that's draped onto the tin surface and allowed for our sign. So we now want to be able to create that as a pedestrian one, or a crossover. We can grab the lantern. So as I pick the light, it rotates around, and you have to orientate it yourself simply by a cursor pick. So I go pick and accept, it then has the light on there. So I go and grab my signal. It's close to the intersection, so I want no cows. So again, best idea is just pick the large circle which indicates the footing. I go accept, and then it rotates around again and orientates the lantern itself. So last of all, I need to add on the pedestrian button. So I select again the footing, and it rotates around, and you orientate by your cursor where you want that button to be. So I'll then have a look at this. I've now got my intersection done with my light. I can copy these, so if I decide to go copy, I can pick the footing like that, and I can copy over to that point over there and make a copy of the light itself. So again, then it's just a matter of where I rotated, where I placed them before. I can now rotate. So if I rotate the symbol like that, put the light over here, and again rotate this, which is the walkway. like that, and then finally rotate the little button and put him around that way. So again, I'm now able to then copy that around and create a pedestrian light system. So again, if I want to do an outreach, so I go to outreach and I grab 6.5, again pick a point here somewhere, and it'll now go out there and I can orientate my outreach by the cursor pick. So again, if I do that and then rotate around here, we can see where our light is. So I'm going to go and place an outreach on this. So if I go and grab one of these ones, a right turn, it says select arm, post or light. So in that case I can pick, if I wanted to be on this outreach, I need to pick that outreach there. So when I go accept, it turns around and rotates around. If I redraw over here, it places my light. If I want to place one on this part of the outreach, like the post, I can simply just go and change that to one of these, something like that. And I go select, and I pick this part of the post. I go accept. And rotate around, do a redraw, and I have my new post. You can actually, if you have the wrong one here, you can actually replace it. So I can go into here and say I want a right turn, this one, and I can go replace. So I can pick that one there, enter. It'll then turn around and replace that with the longer one rather than the shorter one. You can also go and change the outreach. So I want to change the outreach from to a 50 rather than 5 meter rather than 6.5. I can go replace, pick the outreach. It'll then turn around and change that to a smaller one, but also knows that these other lanterns have to move with it as well. So when it looks at the rotate type of thing, you can rotate individual elements, but you also, if you pick the base of the footing like this, you can actually rotate the entire light. All those options know that if you pick that the outreach or the post, it will rotate everything attached to that as well. So again, if I can place as many lights as I want, the type of outreach, attach the lanterns to it and so forth. And I can copy them around. But it also would be handy if I could then save that particular combination and place them all in one go rather than one at a time. So that's what the assembly parts are about. So if I drop down to signal assembly, here's one here that's in my setup area. That is a pedestrian 2.5 pedestrian. So basically you're able to apply the whole thing at once. So in that case here, if I did go to that one and I said I wanted to grab an outreach, and I select this, it creates the combination outreach. In this case it's over the other side of the road, but it may be in the wrong position and so forth, but obviously then you just go through the rotate commands. So again, you're just picking, rotating the symbol, and everything will rotate with it. And then it's up to you then to look at each individual item and rotate it to suit or the type of orientation you're after. If you want to create your own rather than rely on the ones in the setups, there's an option here to create an assembly. So you select the post and the height that you had, and it pops up and says, what do you want to call this one? And so we're just going to call this ped post. And I'm going to save it to my working folder. So now I can place my ped post for my working folder rather than just my setups. But rather than place one at a time, I've drawn a string here that represents all the position of where I want those pedestrian lights. So I can use string option. So I simply pick the string option. It will then turn around and place every one of those light options at the vertices of those strings, and you can individually then go and grab each one and rotate and change if you have to into the actual light configuration. So on top of these other ones, there's a light option. So sometimes you have those extended lights on top of the outreach. So in that case, there it's called a outreach, and it's called mask light. So you select the mask light. In that case here, then we're talking about over in this situation here. So we go enter and accept, and we've got our actual light. So we can adjust that to any position we want, and orientate it to what we're after. So again, the options there, you can save these off. The files that get created when you save those assemblies are saved to your, there's one in setups, but the one you saved before is called 12D traffic assembly .4D. So that gives you an idea of what you can do with the trimeshes. Obviously, the information is stored on the traffic lights. So if I select one of the lights, it's got BIM information or a attribute called BIM. So when we export to IFC, we utilize that BIM. So then we can access options, the trimeshes, inside the IFC world. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Thanks for that, Peter. The recording of today's webinar will be available in coming days through the webinars page on our website and through our 12D Model YouTube channel. Keep an eye on our emails and social media for details of future webinars, including the final episode in this series that Peter will be presenting over the next few weeks. And of course, we've got our Tech Forum coming up in August. So the early bird pricing will be happening until May. I think it's the 15th of May, so it's a good time to get in and register for that now because there's quite a big saving on that. If you need to contact us in the meantime, our details are on the screen now, and I'll be emailing through some questions, Peter, to answer people shortly. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you at future webinars.